The Chinese consulate in New York is denying reports that its top diplomat was removed after Linda's son, former chief of staff to Governor Kathy Hochul and a longtime aide to Governor Andrew Cuomo, was arrested and charged with acting as a foreign agent on behalf of the Chinese government. Now, Hochul saying earlier this week that she asked for Consul General Huang Ping to be expelled following son's arrest and was informed that he was no longer at the New York mission. Now, according to the U.S. State Department, Ping had reached the end of his scheduled rotation and he left at the end of August. But the Chinese consulate general is reportedly claiming he's, quote, performing his duties as usual. Now, Linda's son, meanwhile, is accused of using her position to push Beijing's agenda right here in New York. She allegedly blocked Taiwan representatives from getting meetings with New York officials, eliminated references to Taiwan and Uyghurs from state communications, and sent unauthorized letters inviting Chinese officials for a U.S. visit, allowing Beijing to obtain visas, all in exchange for millions of dollars and gifts that went to her and her husband, which is to the left of your screen. Part of him anyway. Let's bring in Hudson Institute Senior Fellow, Atlas Organization founder, and author of The Decisive Decade, Jonathan D.T. Ward. Jonathan, the big question right now, what other Chinese operatives are here that are still undetected? Because this woman worked in government for years. It was only, quote unquote, discovered and investigated and fired last year.
Hi, Cheryl. Well, look, as the Chinese consulate said, the consul was conducting business as usual. So that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, that's exactly what it is. They are conducting these operations out of our consulates or out of their consulates in the United States. I mean, we've seen all kinds of problems with China's consulates, whether it's in San Francisco with intellectual property theft, whether in Texas during the COVID vaccine, they were trying to steal the vaccine. And of course, in New York, you have all kinds of United Front Work Department activity. If you look at the entire, case that the Eastern District of New York has made public thus far, I mean, it's a pretty amazing thing to read, to hear what this individual was doing. I'm going to read you one quote here where it says, "Sun worked at the request of People's Republic of China government officials to shape the public statements of Politician 1 and Politician 2 to align with the PRC government's political priorities." So, I mean, imagine having this giant network of influence in the United States. That's exactly what the Communist Party is trying to do. And I think the thing that Americans need to understand is something called the United Front Work Department, which is really an old Communist Party method. It goes back to the early years of the Chinese Communist Party, even into the Chinese Civil War, where they would send operatives into the cities during the Civil War to try to persuade groups to take the side of the Chinese Communist Party. And then Xi Jinping has recently elevated this, under his rule in China, to one of the highest priorities of the Chinese Communist Party. So there's no doubt that this activity is going on all over the United States. I mean, there are plenty of groups, including some mentioned in the readout from Eastern District of New York, that are here simply advancing the CCP agenda. And these consulates obviously are part of that. That's exactly what the Chinese Communist Party is able to do in the United States, and we're doing very, very little to counter it. I mean, many of these groups should be illegal, and there should be many more people most likely expelled for their work as direct agents of the People's Republic of China.
Jonathan, I agree with you, and I want to bring in New York City Congressman, council member. I just gave you an upgrade.
I got an upgrade. That's great.
I just gave him a promotion on live television.
Is it a promotion? No, I don't know.
Are you a senator?
Yeah.
No. But Joe, I want to bring you into this discussion because this entire story has really rocked the city of New York and the state.
Look, I know many of these people. They're my political enemies, but they're not someone I would have suspected of spying for the Chinese. And that's kind of what I want to ask you, Jonathan. There's 50 states, there's 50 cities in America with large populations. How serious is the threat from the consular offices around the country? Is this something that governors and mayors, et cetera, need to start looking at in terms of their own security?
Well, look, thank you, sir, for asking that, because that's the right question. And the fact is the Chinese Communist Party is focused at a state government level, even mayors. I mean, we've seen that sort of thing. They send representatives, trade delegations to individual states and capitals and all of that. So they're operating with a level of sophistication that I think we've never seen from a foreign adversary. They've exploited decades worth of people-to-people ties, business ties especially, and then they have these groups that are simply meant to carry out political influence. So I think this is a very deep problem for the United States. There is a lot of expertise in the U.S. on things like United Front. It's just that we're not taking action on it. And we have to, I think, in a very bipartisan way. I mean, this should be a wake-up call for all of us. And the consequences, I think, are pretty severe. I mean, everybody in New York knows the story of the, CCP police department that was in the middle of Manhattan. So, and then there was a biolab discovered in California, and there's the harassment of dissidents. I mean, this is a very serious problem.
And the border. All
Sure,
the Chinese nationals that are coming across the southern border. I mean, China
so look,
is completely...
I think we have to grow up and fight back. I mean, we have to grow up and fight back.
Absolutely. I got to get to this because we are 2 months away from the election, Jonathan. China's reportedly pushing very divisive political messages in this country by posing as American voters, even soldiers, on both X and TikTok. Okay, this is a long-running scheme. It's known as spamouflage. It includes accounts that post about hot topic issues, and it criticizes both Harris and Trump, to be clear. But TikTok has announced an expansion of its how to vote section. They say it's working to improve information about the upcoming presidential election. Hold on. You know, China that owns TikTok. But anyway, this is ByteDance. So they've increasingly become a news source for really these young voters. And they are, of course, owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. They're going to expand their landing page on how elections work. They say they're going to increase media literacy and implement stronger security for politicians' accounts, Jonathan. And if you buy that, I have got a, swamp in Florida. I can't wait to sell you. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. So I think this is something, in a way, it's been long-standing. We've seen adversaries on our social media networks going back for quite a long time now, whether that's Russia, Iran, or China. But I think what's increasingly important is to realize they're probably all learning from each other. I mean, the kind of hallmarks that we've seen from Russian influential operations on social media, they really pioneered that. The Chinese used to be sort of unsophisticated on that. Now they're getting much, much better. And given the deepening of the Russia-China relationship across a bunch of other fronts, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of more direct coordination and sort of learning from one another on this. But if you look at spamouflage, which I believe was discovered by Microsoft and others sort of pushing it out, some of what it's using is AI, imagery and generative AI sort of content in order to become more sophisticated. And one example that I, heard here was the idea that the U.S. government set last year's wildfires in Hawaii to test a military weather weapon. This is what Microsoft reported. So we're going to see this kind of stuff from enemy states across all of these platforms. And then you get into something like TikTok, which is owned by an adversary, corporation. And you have 170 million Americans on this thing. And to me, the most alarming moment was when they sent a push notification to all users to contact their congressperson. But look, I mean, the bill has been written now. It's been passed. I mean, TikTok's days as a ByteDance-owned app, I think, are numbered at this point. And then I think ultimately we have to go after ByteDance and destroy it. I mean, we know how to destroy an adversary corporation. We came pretty far on Huawei. There are others we've done a pretty good job on. And I think, ByteDance is something that's just got to go and take the full brunt of U.S. and allied action.
It's a bipartisan move, an opinion that ByteDance is trouble, and so is TikTok. Congress, by the way, is returning on Monday from the recess. China's going to be a big story here. House Republican leadership are planning to bring up a package of China-related bills, a number of issues, including end Chinese dominance of electric vehicles, an America Act 2024, the Countering CCP Drones Act, the No Foreign Election Interference Act. Jonathan, real quick, your thoughts on all of these and where you think they're going to go.
Well, look, we have a lot of work to do on the China threat, on the China challenge. So, I think there are several major fronts we have to focus on. One is a U.S.-China decoupling, and we're going to have to do this. We cannot be dependent on an enemy state in critical industries and key technologies. I think they're going to have to go after China's companies across the key sectors. They're going to have to roll back and eventually phase out permanent normal trading relations and most favored nation status. I mean, we don't need that with the most hostile state in the world. And then I think acting on fentanyl, acting on the Russia-China relationship. I mean, taking out the Chinese corporations and banks that are pushing that relationship together and holding it together economically. I mean, there's a whole sanctions package you could execute on that. And then the U.S., we're going to need a defense buildup in the Pacific. I mean, there's a backlog of harpoons, for example, into Taiwan. I mean, let's close those backlogs there. Let's increase our munitions capability and work as fast as we can on all of these fronts because we're losing this war.
Yeah, Jonathan D.T. Ward, it's always great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Cheryl.
All right.